Okay, so here we are now in 2018, and our backs are against the wall. This is the hottest issue on the planet, and it is my great pleasure to bring in Helena Da Silva Hughes, who is with the Immigrant Assistance Center in the city of New Bedford. She's the executive director. Helena, appreciate you. I respect what you do. You do a lot of hard work for a lot of people who need help, and I appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, so where do we go from here, Helena? I mean, there's a lot of folks in this country who say, hey, look, this whole debate needs to come to a head. We need to come up with some kind of resolution. As the Harvard study says, most people want to see some kind of resolution for the DACA people, but they want border security, and they want an end to the visa lottery, and they want an end to chain migration. So how do we find a deal on this?
You know, the sad thing is, that for a while, both the Republicans and Democrats, for many years, right? They've been almost 20 years. They've been discussing an immigration reform bill, right? Both parties have used this as political football. They get elected, and then nothing is done. And this has been going on for so long. Now it is, we're talking about, when the President Trump did away with the eliminated DACA. Then, he gave a time, like you mentioned, 6 months for Congress to make a decision. And here we are, in the meanwhile, you're right, a lot of people, it proves on the number you just gave. They really want to have an answer or fix the DACA problem or just immigration reform bill. And, and the sad thing is meanwhile, and we are seeing it here, meanwhile, these students who are DACA recipients, we're seeing the parents being deported. We've had cases that the parents have been deported, and they're here. They basically stayed maybe with a friend or so they can finish school. And so every day we are hearing about the families of DACA recipients getting picked up. So that, so it's affecting in so many levels. I do believe that we definitely need to address the DACA, and we need, there's a DREAM Act on the table, and that it's a Democratic bill, and I actually met with Congressman Keating not too long ago, today, actually around 1, and he mentioned about the USA Act, which is very similar to a DREAM Act, which basically states that you have to be physically present in the United States since before 4 years prior to the date of December 6, 2013. And you have to be younger than 18 years of age. You have to have been admitted to college or earned a high school diploma or GED. And, of course, they have to go through this background check, extensive background check, to make sure that they have not gotten in any trouble and all of that, and eventually will lead them into legal permanent residence. But DACA, the way it is, and the way the executive order that President Obama signed, that executive order, it basically never gave DACA recipients a path to legalization. It was basically just a Band-Aid. It was just said, okay, you go through all this background, and then you have to keep applying, renewing it, but you would never lead them to a green card. Would never lead them to legal.
No, and you're absolutely right. And this is where the politics really stinks, because back in 2008, Obama made a pledge that he was going to deal with the issue of illegal immigration, and he had every ability to do so. He had control of the House and the Senate, and he had a veto-proof margin in the Senate. He was above that 60% filibuster margin, that 60-vote filibuster margin. He made a vow to do that, and he could have done that at the time. He could have taken care of this issue back then, but he put it off and put it off and put it off, and it wasn't until much later in 2012 when he finally did the DACA thing by executive order, which he even said himself he didn't have the constitutional authority to do. So, in a sense, whether you support or you don't support the DACA kids, they have been used as a political football.
Yes, constantly for over 20 years now. And the sad thing is that in the process, here we are again discussing something that should have been done so long ago, and here we are again discussing DACA and having to see, now, I think everybody, agrees that these DACA recipients were brought to this country by their parents. It was not their choice. to come and to be here. It was the parents who just made that not good decision to come to the United States and overstay their visas or come to the border, whatever it is. But it's just such a sad situation that here we are, and we are still discussing this. And now we got until March. I think the president gave until March for Congress to pass some bill that will help, will help the DACA. And there is, like I said, there's a bill, DREAM Act, that was passed by the Democrats, and I think Bridge is a Republican bill. And I know Congressman Keating spoke about the USA Act, which is the Unity and Security Act, and he said that there was 27 Democrats and 26 Republicans that would support that. So it's just the Congress is playing with people's lives, and that's the sad thing about it. It seems like what they're doing is just trying to get elected, so to keep their jobs. And
during the Reagan administration, Reagan agreed to blanket amnesty for a whole lot of folks because he got a wink and a nod from the Democrats. Look, we'll do this, but then we're going to sit down and we're going to have a serious discussion about border security. That never happened. Reagan said it was the worst mistake he ever made because he didn't get a commitment, from them, a valid commitment. So here we are again, and Americans are saying, look, we're willing to sit down and talk about accepting or at least establishing some sort of pathway to citizenship for these people, but not until the border is secured, because if we don't secure that border, we're just going to come right back and do this all over again.
Absolutely. We'll be in the same situation as we are right now.
Yeah.
You can't have an immigration reform bill without securing the border. I think that's something that we all agree, because if not, we're going to be back in the same way that we are again years from now.
All right, so in this give-and-take discussion that we're having between the Democrats and the Republicans in the White House, the president got elected on the issue of building a border wall, and he's insisting upon funding. Would you support the border wall as a way to secure the border? Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think there's other. I mean, we have drones, we have cameras, and already in place. And so I just, the wall, I'm not a fan of it, but I do believe that we need to secure the walls. But I actually think that there is something else. I think we're using drones for a lot of things, and cameras, and of course, people securing the wall. I don't agree with a wall.
All right, but if that's what it takes to get a deal, does Helena De Silva Hughes say, okay, I'll sign on the dotted line, if this is what it takes a deal to protect the DACA people and get them on the road to citizenship? Would you say, okay, fine, I'll accept that?
I would have to say yes.
Okay.
I will accept that, because I think that, and I think one of the things that's important to mention, it's not a path to citizenship, it's a path to legalization. Unless you are a legal permanent resident, the only people that can become citizens of the United States are legal permanent residents. So what we want is the DACA recipients, have like either a bill like the DREAM Act or even this USA Act pass, and this will give the DACA recipients a path to legalization, which means a green card, and then after legalization, then they can apply for for citizenship. And you have, even the DREAM Act, you have to serve in the military for 2 years.
Right.
Which
all right,
I think it's important.
So we're a good part of the way toward an agreement here. You'd say you would accept the wall if that's what it took to get a pathway to legalization. What about chain migration? They want to get rid of chain migration as well. What do you think?
According to this, migration is the family reunification.
Well, according to this poll that we talked about, the Harvard poll, 60% of voters oppose giving preference to parents who illegally brought their children to the U.S. And most people, also 65% of all voters indicate they want an end to the chain migration policy and the visa lottery. So those are two big sticking points. The majority of people, this is Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, 65% say they want those two things gone.
Well, the family reunification, I think they call it chain migration, but I think that's actually the Family Reunification Act, which basically allows, that's how I came to the United States. It's basically like, for example, my father's sister, and I'm just going to use me as an example. My father's sister, who was a U.S. citizen, petitioned for my dad because he had 7 children. He had the most kids. And then my dad came here with a then got a, as a legal permanent resident, got a green card right in Boston, right? And then he was here. He worked here for 2.5 years, almost 2 years, so he could make enough money and work enough so he could save money so he can petition for his wife and 7 children. And then we came, and then my dad, my mom became a citizen and my dad became a citizen, and eventually we became citizens. But the thing is that like, for example, you can't petition, you can't call in your cousins or your aunts. It's got to be a son to a mom or to children, or to a brother, and that's how it is. And I think sometimes when people talk about chain migration, I think people are I don't know if people really understand that it's the family reunification.
Yeah, but that is happening, though, because you've got uncles and cousins and everything else that are coming over as a result of that from other places, and I think that's what people object to. I don't think reasonable people would object to if somebody was given a green card or the proper documentation to come here, that eventually the rest of their immediate family gets to come over too, the wife, the kids, whatever. I don't think anybody objects to that. I think what people object to is what seems to be almost an endless stream of, your great aunt and your great aunt's great aunt and Uncle Harry and everybody else coming in.
To be honest with you, I'll be very honest right now. They can't do that. In other words, I can't call in for my cousins or or for my aunts or any of that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of, what I think happens a lot is I think because even the media many times confuses this whole immigration thing, and I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I think then that's the problem, because, even with the media, when they say, a path to citizenship. A lot of people say to me, Helena, how can they if they're here undocumented, how can you give them a path to citizenship? I says, no, you can't give them a path to citizenship. You got it. Before you do anything else, we have to become legal. Right now, there is no process that can legalization. So we really need, aside from the DREAM Act or whatever to really support the DACA recipients, is also an immigration reform bill.
Well, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about reforming the existing laws that does allow people to take advantage of a situation. I mean, look in California now. I mean, folks who are undocumented or illegal are getting driver's licenses. That would allow them to vote in local elections out in California.
Yeah,
people here,
something. I don't believe in that. I believe that if you, in order to vote, you have to be a U.S. citizen, and in order for you to become a U.S. citizen, you have to be a legal permanent resident for 5 years, and then you have to learn how to speak English, and you have to know how to write, and so and then you have to submit your application. And I'm going to just give you, I don't know if you're familiar with it. So let's say a legal permanent, a green card holder has, after 5 years, they can apply for citizenship. And then they have to send a money order for like $725. So when you submit that application has 20 pages. It asks all the details about where you live, how many children, if you believe in the Constitution, if you serve the military, if you've gotten into any trouble. All of these questions are asked, right? And then the application is submitted with $725 to USCIS. After USCIS gets that application, that application, and then they get a call, they get a letter to go to, for example, Cranston to do their fingerprints. Once people do their fingerprints, they go through 3 FBI checks. And if everything is clear, then they go to USCIS, and they have to, the officer will go through the application to make sure that everything that's on that application is accurate, nothing has changed. And then they go in to ask questions. But the thing is as soon as you get there, they start speaking English, because that's the importance. You have to learn how to speak English if you are going to apply for citizenship within the 5 years. And you have to write a sentence. So you have to be really prepared. So as soon as you go in, the officer comes to meet you, they start talking to you. So how did you get here? Did you drive? Did you take the bus? They start they're already testing you to see how fluent you are in the language. And then they tell you to sit down, and they go through the application, and they start asking you questions regarding the history of the United States. And then they'll ask them to write a sentence. And they test you on the fact to make sure that you can speak the language and understand. And then after you pass the test, then they will send you a letter to go get sworn in. And then once you get sworn in as a U.S. citizen, you go through the oath and the whole thing. And then once you and then you get your citizenship certificate. Once you get your citizenship certificate, then you can register to vote. So the process is not. That's the process right now. And
it's a difficult process, and it should be a difficult process.
And it should be.
Because
Absolutely.
the prize at the end, the ultimate prize, is well worth having. Let me ask you, when you hear about the debate about sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, the administration now has talked about, I guess yesterday they identified 23 districts across the country that they plan to go after and demand some documentation to show that these communities and these states are working with ICE to round up people who are here illegally, who are not looking to go through the process. In Lawrence, Massachusetts was mentioned as one of those jurisdictions, along with, I guess Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, the state of California, the state of Oregon. There has been an effort to make Massachusetts a sanctuary state, and even some talk about New Bedford becoming a sanctuary city. What do you think about that? Because these are the things that really annoy the people who not only were born here, but those who, like yourself, who have come through the system and done it properly.
Well, I think, first of all, as sanctuary cities, I have to tell you, I don't think New Bedford will ever become a sanctuary city. That's just my personal opinion on that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I think that at sanctuary cities, I think if, there's this notion that they're hovering people who are here illegally and committed crimes, okay? So I really believe that if there is someone that has committed crimes and is here undocumented, I'm pretty sure that the city or whoever it is, the government, the governor or the mayor, I am pretty sure if they're hovering undocumented immigrants who are criminals, I am pretty sure that they will allow that they will allow to come in and arrest them. I do believe that.
I don't think they'll have a choice because their federal funding would be jeopardized. Exactly. But you got mayors like Marty Walsh in Boston saying, "Well, come to City Hall, we'll hide you out here." But I think based on the conversation that we've had, I think you're a very reasonable person, and I think I have a great deal of respect for what you do and what you're saying here. I think you respect the immigration laws, and I think that you would probably agree with me that we really have no need for sanctuary cities if people are playing by the rules. If people are sneaking in, then they need sanctuary. If people are not sneaking in but are coming in and playing by the rules and doing things the way they're supposed to be doing them, we really would have no need for a sanctuary city, would we?
Well, I think exactly. But at the same time, I think there's a misconception on sanctuary cities that they're hovering criminals. I really believe that because I really believe that if there are criminals, I'm pretty sure even the sanctuary cities will allow. They don't want them in the area either. But I think one of the things I want to mention, because I think there's a lot of misconception. Okay, everybody, we talked about the border, right? Yeah. One of the things I say is, like, when we talk about the 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States, and those numbers might even be higher, it's important to understand that 60% of the undocumented immigrants, 60% are coming through the border. But then there's the other 40% who are coming in as visitors or as students.
Sure.
And are staying.
Overstaying their visas. I mean, all of the...
so they're all undocumented, too.
Sure. All of the 9/11 hijackers were all exactly that, people who came and overstayed their visas. And so that's just as big of a problem, and we need to crack down on that aspect of it as well. You're absolutely right.
Okay, so even if we build that, let's just say, even if that the wall is built, then you got to understand there's another 40% that are coming and staying. So I really believe at the end of the day, what we really need is an immigration reform bill. And there was one that I remember the late Senator Kennedy had put on the table, and it made so much sense. And it had also Republican support. And that immigration reform bill that was on the table made so much sense. So you have to... First of all, you'd have to go to a background check. I think background checks is extremely important because right there, when you do the background checks, you can make sure that no one's have gotten into any if there's no criminal activity. So the background checks is something that we're saying. Secondly, was to make sure people pay taxes.
Right.
Because even though you are here undocumented, you can actually get a tax ID number so you can do your taxes. So I think it's important that, first of all, making sure that people are paying their taxes, because if they are, going to the schools and using the system or whatever, driving cars even without a license, it's important that people need to people need to pay taxes. So this immigration reform bill that was on the table that didn't pass made a lot of sense. So basically making sure that people didn't pay taxes, or at least now start a process for them to stop paying their taxes.
All right, so Trump says that he, again, I've got to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But so Trump says that he would be willing to accept a pathway to legality, as you say, in exchange for his border wall. Do you think that's going to happen?
I just, right now the way Congress is, I don't think anything's going to happen.
Wow. Nothing at all, huh? No change?
I don't think really anything happen until the next elections, until November. I really think that they're going to play with this back and forth, and I think because no one wants to meet them. Nobody wants to meet in the middle right now. Everybody's we're protecting their own party, and nothing is happening. And it's a sad thing because I was hoping that maybe by March, but I think they're going to procrastinate and until elections come again, and maybe there's a shift in Congress or in the Senate. Because right now, both the Congress and the Senate and the President, they're all Republicans. And so right now, until there is a shift, then I really don't think it is going to happen. Because I think a lot of people who are coming up for elections don't want to lose their job.
All right, Helena Da Silva Hughes, New Bedford Immigration Assistance Center. Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. Please come back again soon.
Very well. Thank you. Have a good day. 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 Very well.